Hey everyone. Get cozy, settle into a comfy position, and let these calming tales whisk you away to a peaceful night's sleep. Drop a comment below on what time and from where you are watching this video and share your own late-night ritual that helps you drift off. In a quiet coastal town in 2017, where the salty breeze carried the scent of seaweed and the hum of distant waves, lived a young woman named Lila. She ran a small cafe called the Driftwood Haven, a cozy spot where locals gathered to sip chamomile tea and share stories under the glow of mismatched lamps. Lila loved her routine, waking at dawn to bake scones, arranging wildflowers in mason jars, and chatting with regulars about the weather or the latest news on their phones. But deep down she felt a quiet ache, a sense that something was missing, like a song she couldn't quite remember. One rainy evening, as Lila swept the cafe's wooden floor, a customer left behind a peculiar object, a small, tarnished lantern no bigger than a teacup. Its glass was cloudy, etched with faint swirls that seemed to shift when she tilted it. Curious, she set it on the counter, thinking someone would return for it. But no one did. That night, as she locked up, the lantern flickered, not with a flame but with a soft, silvery light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Lila blinked, sure she was imagining it. She tucked the lantern into her bag and headed home, the rain pattering softly on her umbrella. At her small apartment above the cafe, Lila placed the lantern on her windowsill. The silvery glow returned, brighter now, and with it came a whisper, so faint she thought it was the wind. "Follow the light," it seemed to say. Lila laughed nervously, chalking it up to exhaustion. She wasn't one for whimsy. Her life was grounded in flower-dusted aprons and early mornings. But as she lay in bed, the whisper grew clearer, weaving through her thoughts like a lullaby. Follow the light and find what's lost. The next night, unable to resist her curiosity, Lila lit the lantern, not with a match but by touching its glass, which warmed under her fingers. The silvery glow spilled out, forming a shimmering path that floated like mist across her floor and out the door. Heart pounding, she followed it, barefoot in her pajamas, down the creaky stairs and into the quiet streets. The town was asleep, its lights dimmed by fog, but the lantern's glow led her toward the beach, where the waves whispered secrets to the shore. The path ended at a tide pool, its surface mirroring the stars. Lila knelt, the lantern's light reflecting in the water, and saw something impossible. Her own face, but younger, laughing with a joy she hadn't felt in years. The whisper returned, soft as sea foam. "What have you lost?" it asked. Lila's chest tightened. She thought of her childhood dreams, painting murals, traveling to far-off places, chasing ideas that felt too big for her small life. Somewhere along the way she tucked them away, choosing safety over wonder. The lantern pulsed and the tide pool shimmered, showing her a new image, a canvas splashed with colors, a suitcase packed for adventure, a life where she wasn't afraid to dream. Tears pricked her eyes. "I don't know how to start," she whispered. The lantern's glow softened and the whisper replied, "Begin with one step." Each night after that, Lila followed the lantern's light. It never led her far, sometimes to the pier where she sketched the horizon in a notebook, sometimes to the library where she read about distant cities, once to a quiet meadow where she danced under the stars, laughing at her own clumsiness. The lantern didn't promise miracles. It didn't conjure wealth or fame. But it gave her moments of courage, tiny sparks that rekindled her spirit. Word of Lila's lantern spread through the town as stories do. Locals began visiting the Driftwood Haven, not just for scones but to see the strange little light. Some swore it whispered to them too, nudging them toward forgotten dreams. A fisherman who started carving driftwood, a teacher who wrote poetry again. The cafe became a haven for quiet dreamers, its walls lined with Lila's sketches and notes from others' rediscovered passions. One evening, a year later, Lila sat by the tide pool again, the lantern glowing softly beside her. She'd started painting again, small canvases of the sea and sky, and had booked a ticket to a city she'd always wanted to visit. The whisper was fainter now, as if its work was done. "What are you?" she asked, tracing the lantern's swirls. No answer came, but the glow pulsed once, then dimmed, leaving only starlight. Lila smiled, tucking the lantern into her bag. She didn't need its light anymore, she'd found her own. As she walked home, the waves sang softly and the town slept, wrapped in the quiet magic of new beginnings. In a small mountain village cradled by pine-covered hills, where the air carried the sharp scent of cedar and the distant chime of a stream, lived Elias, a weaver in his 60s. His shop, a weathered wooden building called the Thread Haven, sat at the village's edge, its windows glowing warmly against the dusk. Inside, bolts of wool and linen lined the walls, and a creaky loom, his grandfather's, its wood polished by decades of touch, stood like an old friend. Elias was known for his blankets, soft and warm, their patterns intricate yet familiar, like the hills themselves. Villagers bought them for chilly nights, draping them over armchairs or wrapping them around children as they listened to bedtime stories. But Elias, with his silver hair and quiet eyes, felt his days had woven into a predictable rhythm, each one blending into the next like threads in a plain cloth. One crisp autumn evening, as the village settled into silence and the sky turned a deep indigo, Elias swept the shop's oak floor, the broom's bristles whispering against the grain. Behind a dusty shelf he found something peculiar, a small silver shuttle no larger than a walnut, its surface etched with tiny constellations that glimmered faintly under the lamplight. It wasn't his nor his grandfather's, he knew every tool in the shop by heart. When he held it, the shuttle hummed, warm against his calloused fingers as if alive. Curious, he set it on his workbench, thinking a customer might claim it. But no one did. As he locked up, the shuttle glowed softly, casting silvery flecks on the walls, like stars reflected on a still lake. That night, in his small attic room above the shop, Elias couldn't sleep. The shuttle sat on his windowsill, its glow pulsing gently, and a whisper drifted through the air, so faint he thought it was the wind rustling the pines. "Weave what you long for," it said, soft as a sigh. Elias shook his head, dismissing it as a trick of his tired mind. He was a practical man, his life measured in skeins and stitches, not whimsy. Yet the whisper lingered, stirring memories of his youth, dreams of sailing across vast oceans, of weaving tapestries that told stories of adventure, of leaving a legacy beyond his quiet village. He'd set those dreams aside long ago, choosing the steady comfort of routine over the uncertainty of ambition. The next evening, drawn by a restless curiosity, Elias sat at his loom. The shuttle gleamed, its constellations shifting as if mapping a new sky. He threaded it into the warp, half expecting nothing. But as he pushed it through, the threads shimmered, transforming into colors he'd never seen in his dyes. Blues deep as twilight, golds warm as a summer dawn, silvers that sparkled like frost. The whisper returned, steady and gentle. "Weave your heart." Elias closed his eyes, his hands trembling. He pictured the sea he'd never sailed, its waves crashing under a stormy sky, and the stories he'd imagined as a boy, tales of sailors, lighthouses, and distant shores. His fingers moved, guided by memory, and the loom sang, its rhythm like the ebb and flow of tides. Hours later he stepped back. The blanket wasn't like his others. Its patterns shifted, waves one moment, stars the next, as if alive. When he draped it over his shoulders, it was warm, not just with the heat of wool but with a comfort that eased the ache in his chest. The whisper spoke again, "Take it to the hill." Elias hesitated, then grabbed his coat and climbed the wooded path behind his shop to a clearing where the village gathered to watch meteor showers. The air was cool, scented with pine and damp earth. Under the starlit sky, the blanket glowed brighter, its patterns coming alive, ships tossing on stormy seas, lighthouses standing firm on rocky cliffs, scenes from a life Elias had only dreamed. Each night, Elias returned to his loom, the shuttle guiding his hands. He wove more blankets, each unique. One shimmered with a forest where leaves danced without wind, another with a city of spires under a crimson sky. The whispers were gentle, never commanding, nudging him to weave what he'd buried. His wanderlust, his untold stories, the spark of a younger Elias who believed the world was vast and full of wonder. The shuttle's magic wasn't grand, it didn't promise riches or fame. But it gave him moments of clarity, like stars piercing a cloudy night, showing him the dreams he'd tucked away. Word of the blanket spread through the village, carried on the soft voices of neighbors. People came to the Thread Haven, not just for warmth but to see the loom's glow. A young baker named Clara wove a blanket of golden wheat fields and found the courage to open her own bakery, its windows filled with steaming loaves. A shy boy named Finn wove a pattern of soaring birds and began writing songs, humming them as he walked the hills. The shop became a haven for quiet dreamers, its walls hung with blankets that shimmered with possibility. Elias listened to their stories, his heart softening. He'd always thought his life too small for big dreams, but the shuttle showed him that even small lives could hold vast worlds. One clear night, Elias climbed the hill again, the shuttle in his pocket and his favorite blanket, the one with waves and stars, draped over his shoulders. He lay in the clearing, the grass cool beneath him, and watched the stars. The whisper was fainter now, like a friend stepping back. "What are you?" he asked, tracing the shuttle's constellations. No answer came, but the blanket glowed once, then dimmed, blending with the starlight. Elias smiled. He'd started writing his stories, sharing them with the village children who gathered in his shop, their eyes wide as he described far-off seas. He'd even planned a trip to the coast, his first in decades, to feel the salt air on his face. As he walked back to the Thread Haven, the pines rustled softly, and the village slept, wrapped in the gentle magic of rediscovered dreams. The shuttle rested quietly in his pocket, its work done, leaving Elias to weave the rest of his story with his own hands. In a bustling city tucked between glass skyscrapers and leafy parks, where the hum of traffic blended with the chatter of sparrows, lived Nora, a watchmaker in her 40s. Her shop, the Ticking Nook, was a small haven on a quiet street, its walls lined with clocks of every kind, grandfather clocks with deep chimes, pocket watches with intricate engravings, and modern timepieces glowing with digital displays. Nora's hands were steady, her eyes sharp from years of fixing delicate gears, but her heart felt out of rhythm. Life had become a predictable tick-tock of repairs and polite smiles, leaving her longing for something she couldn't name, like a melody half forgotten. One rainy afternoon, as Nora polished a brass pendulum, a customer left behind a curious object. A small round clock no bigger than an apple, its face made of frosted glass etched with faint, spiraling vines. Its hands were still and it made no sound, yet it felt warm to the touch, as if humming with hidden life. Nora set it on her counter, expecting someone to return for it, but the day passed with only the patter of rain against her shop's window. That night, as she locked up, the clock's glass glowed faintly, a soft green like new leaves in spring. A sound came from it, not a tick but a note, clear and soft like a flute played far away. "Find the song," it seemed to sing. Nora shook her head, blaming the late hour. She was practical, her world built on springs and cogs, not mysteries. But when she brought the clock to her apartment above the shop, the note returned, weaving through the air as she sipped chamomile tea. "Find the song," it sang again, curling into her thoughts like a lullaby. Nora stared at the clock, its vines seeming to shift under the lamplight. She thought of her childhood, when she dreamed of composing music, her fingers dancing on an old piano in her parents' attic. Those dreams had faded, replaced by the steady work of fixing time. The next night, curiosity won. Nora touched the clock's glass and it warmed under her fingers. The green glow brightened and a trail of faint, shimmering notes floated from the clock, drifting out her window like fireflies. Barefoot in her sweater, Nora followed, down the stairs and into the city's quiet streets. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that mirrored the neon lights. The notes led her to a small park, where an ancient oak stood, its branches swaying gently. The clock hummed, and Nora saw something impossible. The tree's leaves glowed, and their rustle formed a melody, soft and wistful, like the music she'd once imagined. The song asked, "What have you lost?" Nora's throat tightened. She thought of the piano, its keys dusty now, and the songs she'd never written. Melodies for joy, for sorrow, for the way the city sparkled at dusk. She whispered, "I don't know where to begin." The clock's note softened. "Start with one sound," it sang. Nora sat under the oak, the clock in her lap, and hummed a single note, hesitant but clear. The tree's leaves seemed to hum back, blending with her voice. Each night, Nora followed the clock's glowing notes. They led her to quiet corners of the city, a fountain where water danced in rhythmic splashes, a rooftop where wind whistled through old antennas, a street where buskers played late into the night. Each place taught her a sound, a fragment of a song. She began carrying a notebook, jotting down melodies as they came, her hands remembering the feel of music. The clock didn't promise fame or grand stages. It offered moments of connection, like threads stitching her heart back together. Word of Nora's clock spread through the neighborhood. Customers lingered in the ticking nook, drawn by its glow. A barista named Sam, who'd stopped painting years ago, heard the clock's song and sketched a mural of swirling vines. A retired teacher named Lila hummed with it and started a choir for seniors, their voices filling the community center. The shop became a sanctuary for quiet creators, its shelves now holding notebooks and sketches alongside clocks. Nora listened to their stories, her own spirit lifting. She'd thought her life too small for music, but the clock showed her otherwise. One evening, Nora followed the notes to the park again. She sat under the oak, the clock glowing softly. She'd started playing her old piano, composing simple tunes, and had joined a local music group, sharing her melodies with strangers who smiled and clapped. The clock's song was fainter now, as if stepping back. "What are you?" Nora asked, tracing its vines. No note came, but the glass pulsed once, then dimmed, blending with the starlight filtering through the leaves. Nora smiled, tucking the clock into her bag. She didn't need its song anymore, she'd found her own. As she walked home, the city hummed softly, traffic, laughter, the rustle of trees, and she felt its rhythm, ready to write the next verse of her life. In a quiet riverside town, where willows dipped their branches into the water and the evening air carried the scent of damp moss, lived Samir, a librarian in his 30s. His library, the Willow Page, was a cozy stone building nestled between a bakery and a flower shop, its shelves brimming with books of every kind, dog-eared novels, glossy art tomes, and journals filled with handwritten notes. Samir loved his work, shelving books with care and recommending stories to townsfolk, but his days felt like pages in a book he'd read too many times. Deep down, he missed the spark of his youth, when he'd filled sketchbooks with drawings of fantastical worlds, cities in the clouds, forests alive with light. One misty evening, as Samir tidied the library's reading nook, he found a small leather-bound sketchbook tucked behind a cushion. Its cover was soft, etched with faint crescent moons that shimmered under the lamplight. No one claimed it, though Samir asked every patron. Curious, he opened it, expecting notes or doodles, but the pages were blank, glowing faintly like moonlight on water. That night, as he locked the library, the sketchbook hummed softly in his bag, and a whisper drifted through the air, light as a breeze. "Draw what you see," it said. Samir frowned, chalking it up to the wind whistling through the willows. He was practical, his life built on organizing shelves and cataloging titles, not chasing whims. But in his small apartment above the library, the sketchbook's glow persisted, casting silvery patterns on his walls. The whisper returned, soft and insistent. "Draw what you see." Samir thought of his old sketchbooks, now boxed away, filled with dreams of adventure and wonder. He'd stopped drawing years ago, choosing the steady rhythm of library life over the uncertainty of art. The next night, curiosity tugged at him. Samir opened the sketchbook, its pages smooth under his fingers, and picked up a pencil. The moment he touched the paper, the glow brightened, and a trail of tiny shimmering moons floated from the page, drifting out his window like fireflies. Heart racing, he followed, still in his sweater and slippers, down the creaky stairs and into the misty streets. The town was quiet, its cobblestones slick with dew. The moons led him to the riverbank, where the water reflected a sky full of stars. The sketchbook hummed, and Samir saw something impossible. The river's surface shimmered, showing a city of spires floating among clouds, just like the ones he'd drawn as a boy. The whisper asked, "What do you see?" Samir's chest tightened. He thought of his old dreams, creating art that told stories, exploring places beyond the river, living a life bold enough to match his imagination. "I don't know how to go back," he whispered. The sketchbook's glow softened. "Start with one line," it replied. Samir sat on the riverbank, the grass cool beneath him, and sketched the floating city. As his pencil moved, the river seemed to ripple in time, its gentle lapping blending with the whisper's melody. Each night, Samir followed the sketchbook's moons. They led him to quiet corners of the town, a meadow where fireflies danced in patterns, an old bridge where shadows formed arches like cathedral windows, a hill where the wind carried the scent of wildflowers. Each place inspired a sketch, and the pages filled with images, forests glowing with light, ships sailing through starry skies, creatures woven from mist. The sketchbook didn't promise grand adventures or fame. It offered moments of clarity, like moonlight breaking through clouds, showing Samir the dreams he'd tucked away. Word of the sketchbook spread through the town, carried by whispers in the bakery and flower shop. People visited the willow page, drawn by its glow. A florist named Mara, who'd stopped sculpting clay, sketched a garden of impossible blooms and began molding again. A teenager named Leo, shy about his writing, drew a dragon and started a story to match. The library became a haven for quiet dreamers, its tables covered with sketchbooks, poems, and half-finished paintings. Samir listened to their ideas, his own heart lighter. He'd thought his life too ordinary for art, but the sketchbook showed him that wonder lived in small moments. One clear night, Samir followed the moons to the riverbank again. He sat under a willow, the sketchbook glowing softly. He'd started drawing daily, sharing his work with library patrons, and had joined an art group in the next town, where he swapped sketches and stories. The whisper was faint now, like a friend stepping back. "What are you?" Samir asked, tracing the crescent moons on the cover. No answer came, but the sketchbook pulsed once, its glow fading into the starlight on the river. Samir smiled, slipping the sketchbook into his bag. He didn't need its moons anymore, he'd found his own light. As he walked home, the river sang softly, and the town slept, wrapped in the gentle magic of rediscovered dreams. In a sprawling desert town where the sun painted the sand gold and the nights buzzed with the hum of cicadas, lived Elara, a mapmaker in her late 20s. Her shop, the Sandros Cartography, was a small adobe building on the edge of town, its walls adorned with maps of winding canyons, star charts, and hand-drawn trails. Amara's days were spent tracing routes for travelers, her fingers smudged with ink, but her heart felt adrift, like a compass without a true north. She longed for adventure, for paths beyond her dusty town, but her life was anchored in routine, her dreams of exploration buried under stacks of parchment. One sweltering afternoon, as Amara dusted her shelves, she found an odd item tucked behind a pile of old maps. A small brass compass, its surface etched with delicate spirals that caught the light like ripples in water. It had no owner's name, and its needle spun lazily, pointing nowhere. Curious, she set it on her desk, thinking a traveler might claim it. But no one did. That night, as she locked up, the compass glowed faintly, a warm amber that pulsed like a distant star. A whisper drifted from it, soft as the desert wind. "Follow the path," it said. Amara blinked, blaming the heat. She was grounded, her world built on precise lines and coordinates, not mysteries. But in her small loft above the shop, the compass's glow lingered, casting golden flecks on her ceiling. The whisper returned, weaving through the air like a melody. "Follow the path." Amara thought of her childhood, when she dreamed of trekking through jungles, climbing mountains, mapping places no one had seen. Those dreams had faded, replaced by the steady work of charting familiar trails. The next evening, curiosity got the better of her. Amara touched the compass's glass, and it warmed under her fingers. The amber glow brightened, and a trail of tiny, shimmering sparks floated from the needle, drifting out her window like fireflies. Heart pounding, she followed, still in her cotton tunic and sandals, through the quiet streets where the scent of sage hung heavy. The town was asleep, its adobe homes bathed in moonlight. The sparks led her to the desert's edge, where a lone Joshua tree stood, its twisted branches reaching for the stars. The compass hummed, and Amara saw something impossible. The sand shimmered, forming a path that stretched into the distance, lined with glowing flowers that pulsed like lanterns. The whisper asked, "Where do you wish to go?" Amara's breath caught. She thought of her old dreams, sketching uncharted lands, feeling the wind of far-off places, living a life as vast as the maps she drew. "I don't know how to start," she whispered. The compass's glow softened. "Take one step," it replied. Amara stepped onto the path, the sand cool beneath her feet, and the flowers pulsed brighter, their light guiding her forward. She pulled a notebook from her pocket and sketched the scene, her pencil capturing the curves of the tree and the glow of the blooms. Each night, Amara followed the compass's sparks. They led her to hidden corners of the desert, a canyon where rocks hummed with ancient echoes, a dune where the wind carved patterns like waves, a spring where water sparkled under moonlight. Each place inspired a map, her notebook filling with sketches of paths that felt alive. The compass didn't promise grand journeys or fame. It offered moments of wonder, like stars piercing the dark, showing Elara the dream she'd buried. Word of the compass spread through the town, carried by travelers passing through. People visited the Sandro's cartography, drawn by its glow. A mechanic named Tariq, who'd stopped carving wood, followed the sparks and crafted a sculpture of desert blooms. A young poet named Aisha sketched a glowing path and wrote verses about wandering. The shop became a haven for quiet dreamers, its walls lined with maps, carvings, and poems that shimmered with possibility. Elara listened to their stories, her own spirit lifting. She'd thought her life too small for adventure, but the compass showed her that every step could be a journey. One starry night, Elara followed the sparks to the Joshua tree again. She sat in the sand, the compass glowing softly. She'd started mapping new trails, sharing them with hikers, and had planned a trip to a distant canyon, her first adventure in years. The whisper was faint now, like a friend stepping back. "What are you?" she asked, tracing the compass's spirals. No answer came, but the needle spun once, then stilled, its glow fading into the starlight. Elara smiled, slipping the compass into her pocket. She didn't need its sparks anymore. She'd found her own path. As she walked home, the desert hummed softly, cicadas, wind, the rustle of sand, and she felt its rhythm, ready to map the next chapter of her life. In a quaint forest village where sunlight filtered through ancient oaks and the air carried the scent of pine and wild honeysuckle, lived Clara, a locksmith in her early 30s. Her shop, the Oak Bolt, was a small wooden cabin at the village's heart, its shelves lined with keys of every kind, brass skeleton keys, modern fobs, and delicate antiques with ornate bows. Clara's hands were nimble, her mind sharp from years of crafting locks, but her days felt like a key stuck in a worn groove. She longed for something beyond the village, a purpose as vibrant as the stories her grandmother once told her about hidden doors and far-off lands. One foggy morning, as Clara swept the shop's porch, she found a peculiar object tucked beneath a bench. A small silver key no bigger than her thumb, etched with tiny, swirling vines that shimmered like dew. It had no tag, no owner, and didn't match any lock in her collection. Curious, she set it on her counter, expecting a customer to claim it. But the day passed with only the rustle of leaves outside. That night, as she locked up, the key glowed faintly, a soft emerald light pulsing like a heartbeat. A whisper drifted from it, light as the forest breeze. "Find the door," it said. Clara frowned, blaming the late hour. She was practical, her world built on tumblers and pins, not mysteries. But in her cozy room above the shop, the key's glow lingered, casting green flecks on her ceiling like fireflies. The whisper returned, soft and melodic. "Find the door." Clara thought of her grandmother's tales, doors to secret gardens, to realms of light and shadow. She dreamed of finding such places as a child, sketching maps to imaginary worlds. Those dreams had faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of crafting keys. The next evening, curiosity stirred her. Clara touched the key and it warmed under her fingers. The emerald glow brightened, and a trail of tiny shimmering vines floated from it, drifting out her window like petals on the wind. Heart racing, she followed, still in her flannel shirt and boots, through the village's quiet paths. The forest was still, its air cool and scented with moss. The vines led her to a clearing where an ancient oak stood, its trunk wide and gnarled. The key hummed, and Clara saw something impossible. The tree's bark shimmered, revealing a faint outline of a door, its edges glowing with the same emerald light. The whisper asked, "What do you seek?" Clara's breath caught. She thought of her old dreams, exploring beyond the village, discovering places that felt alive, living a life as bold as her grandmother's stories. "I don't know where to look," she whispered. The key's glow softened. "Open one door," it replied. Clara pressed the key to the tree, and the outline sharpened, the bark parting to reveal a path of glowing moss winding into the forest. She stepped forward, pulling a small journal from her pocket to sketch the scene, her pencil capturing the vines and the tree's ancient knots. Each night, Clara followed the key's vines. They led her to hidden corners of the forest, a glade where fireflies wove patterns like constellations, a stream where pebbles glowed like stars, a hollow where the wind sang through branches. Each place inspired a sketch, her journal filling with maps of paths that felt like dreams. The key didn't promise grand adventures or treasures. It offered moments of wonder like sunlight through leaves, showing Clara the dream she'd locked away. Word of the key spread through the village, carried by whispers in the market and tavern. People visited the oak bolt, drawn by its glow. A baker named Eli who'd stopped whittling followed the vines and carved a wooden bird that seemed to flutter. A young seamstress named Lila sketched a glowing path and began designing dresses inspired by the forest. The shop became a haven for quiet dreamers, its walls hung with sketches, carvings, and fabrics that shimmered with possibility. Clara listened to their stories, her own heart lighter. She'd thought her life too small for wonder, but the key showed her that every lock held a story. One moonlit night, Clara followed the vines to the oak again. She sat in the clearing, the key glowing softly. She'd started sketching daily, sharing her maps with villagers, and had planned a hike to a distant valley, her first step beyond the forest. The whisper was faint now, like a friend stepping back. "What are you?" she asked, tracing the key's vines. No answer came, but the key pulsed once, its glow fading into the moonlight filtering through the trees. Clara smiled, slipping the key into her pocket. She didn't need its vines anymore, she'd found her own path. As she walked home, the forest sang softly, crickets, wind, the rustle of leaves, and she felt its rhythm ready to unlock the next chapter of her life.